Well, good afternoon. I'm Jeff Hare. I'm an attorney in San Jose, real estate attorney, and I want to thank the Thunderbird and the real estate as well as the short sales team for inviting me to be here today. By way of disclaimer, we're all required to give these disclaimers, unfortunately. I'm not an attorney for Thunderbird. I'm a sole practitioner in San Jose. And also today I'm going to be giving some examples and talking in general terms, and even during the question and answer period that follows, I'm happy to answer general questions, but I'm not allowed to give legal advice to any one of you So please don't take what I say as legal advice. I will be encouraging you, of course, to consult with an attorney of your choice to get specific answers to any specific issues that you're facing. Now, you've heard so far about the tax consequences and the credit consequences of going through this process that we call the foreclosure process. And I think it's very important you have to understand that there's several ways to avoid foreclosure, but we're talking today about loan modifications, or as it's more commonly called, a loan mod. First of all, let's understand that a loan modification is really nothing more than a change in the terms of your agreement, of your legally binding contract when you borrowed money to buy your house. Loan mods have been around for 20 or 30 years. Okay, there's really nothing new about them. The problem is that when you go through a loan modification, it could be for any one of a number of reasons, which can result in a higher monthly payment, not always a lower monthly payment. You must be eligible for a loan mod, and you must qualify with the investor. Now, here's what happened. When the housing market started to go into the tank in the latter part of 2006 and the early part of 2007, a lot of people started finding out about the possibility of modifying their loans so they could avoid foreclosure. The idea was to avoid going into foreclosure by modifying the terms of the agreement with the lender. The problem is that 60% of these loans that were modified in 2008 resulted in a higher monthly payment. How can that happen? Well, one of the reasons it can is that the lender would change from an interest-only loan to an amortized loan, which would involve the payment of principal plus interest, plus they would usually add on an impound or escrow account to make sure the taxes were paid and the insurance was paid. So the monthly payments actually went up in a lot of cases. Sometimes the lender would increase the amount of the monthly payment just because they saw there was more money available than when the person initially applied. So there are a number of reasons. So it is no real surprise then that over 60% of the loan modifications that were issued in 2008 failed. People went back into foreclosure. The goal, however, is to avoid foreclosure. Foreclosure is really the worst of all the consequences that can happen. There used to be a lot of people who come up to me and ask, well, what if I just walk away? Let's just let it go to foreclosure. You don't want that to happen. That is really the worst case. There are so many options that you can go to, and we'll be talking about a couple of these here. Foreclosure is the longest hit on your credit record. It's even worse than bankruptcy in some cases. So you really want to avoid foreclosure as all possible. The projections, however, are pretty grim. 9 million foreclosures by 2012, and I've heard that by 2015 they're expecting 13 million foreclosures. Wow. You can check a great site at the Center for Responsible Lending for information about that, the projections and the facts that are coming out. And of course, they really don't know, but this is the best guesses they have. In response to the dismal results of the loan modification plans that were done in 2008, the new administration launched a plan to try and redo the process. And on March 4th, they released a new set of guidelines. The new set of guidelines provided some financial incentives to the lenders to try and make the loan modifications work. And one of the key components of the loan modification plan was to try and drive down the monthly payments to be equivalent to approximately 31% of gross monthly income. Now, the problem with that is that's not a mandatory statement. That was a goal. It was a target. And there were several obstacles that we ran into. First of all, lenders are still trying to figure out what these guidelines are. Now, I read them the day they came out. And from front to back, I read through the guidelines. So I thought I was pretty smart. So I started calling up lenders and talking to them about the process of what was involved in these loan modifications. And I was surprised when they said, well, we don't have them yet. We haven't had a chance to read them yet. Okay, well, give them a couple of weeks, couple of months. We're now almost 6 months later, and we still don't have lenders out there that understand these rules, let alone the staff that they just recently hired last week to try and answer some of these questions. Investors control the terms. A lot of people think, well, I have a relationship. I've been banking with Bank of America for 27 years, and my home loan's with them, and they'll give me what I need. Well, the reality is that lender doesn't own your loan. Your legally binding agreement on your loan is now been sold maybe several times and is owned by someone else or another company. And that investor, as they're called, owns the terms and controls the terms. And in some cases is bound by law not to change those terms. Another obstacle was unemployment. Now, news just came out yesterday. Santa Cruz is at 10.7% unemployment. That sounds horrible. Silicon Valley went to 12%. State of California, 12.2%. So unemployment continues to be one of the single biggest problems that we're faced in trying to come through this recovery. And remember, you have to be eligible and you have to be qualified to get a loan modification. If you're unemployed, it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to qualify. I won't mention too much about the scam artist and the amount of fraud and misinformation. I think there's been enough reported about this, but I can tell you right now that the crackdown is coming down in the form of legislation and action by the Attorney General's office to absolutely prohibit people from charging money from doing loan modifications. That's the tactic that they're taking because they've identified that as being the source of the problem. Of course, I disagree. I think the source of a problem is far more complex than that, and it has nothing to do with the fees that are being charged. It has to do with the services performed for those fees. And I've had horror stories of people walking into my office or calling me and saying they shelled out $10,000 to get a loan mod, never heard from the people again, and they tell me who it is, and I say, well, they were arrested 2 months ago. One's a fugitive from justice, and they walked away. The guy lost his house, he lost his $10,000, and he's lost his wife. Everything has gone downhill. These are the stories that we're dealing with because of these scam artists. But there is some pending legislation on the governor's desk right now that's going to make the situation, I believe, a little even worse because it's going to restrict that the only people that can do loan modifications are the nonprofit HUD-approved counselors. I have a feeling that they're going to be having a very difficult time keeping up with the workload. The last call I got, somebody made an appointment with a HUD counselor. Earliest appointment they could get was 14 weeks out. That still may be enough time, but there are problems with that.